Not yet learned your lesson?
This time, Fenlong, I came ready.
Ready to lose again?
Welcome to the relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, and now it's time for another installment of what has fast become the most popular segment here on the channel, Ring IQ Hate Mail. Jerry Soriano is back, a regular here on the Hate Mail. He didn't like my evaluation of what happened to David Morrell and how David Morrell is a media creation just like his favorite fighter, David Benavidez. Jerry said you still have yet to explain to your audience why Morrell could eat punches to the head versus Benavidez and never went down, but now has been dropped in every fight afterwards. Well, every fight that he's had afterwards has been against the light heavyweight, a bona fide light heavyweight and not a fighter that's moved up like David. Does that answer your question? Jerry continued, slumped by a light puncher. So what has happened to his punch resistance? Try to answer that question this time. For your information, that's how you damage a fighter. But I did answer the question, Jerry. Radovanje Kalajdzic before he fights David Benavidez, Imam Katayev after he fights him, and Zach Chelly all made David Morrell look human, and what they all have in common is they're bona fide light heavyweights. They're not guys who moved up. Jerry continued, Samson Lukowicz turned the Callum Smith fight down in Saudi. Are you saying that Callum Smith didn't turn the fight down versus Benavidez in Vegas? No, I never said that. That's why Anthony Yarde stepped in. Hearn confirmed negotiations were ongoing, so if you're going to go there, go all the way there. Don't half-ass it. I didn't half-ass it, Jerry. That's what you're doing. Why reject Turkey LL Sheik's offer to face Callum Smith in the interim just to run back to America and try to make a fight with the same guy for less money? Because you do realize that's why it didn't happen. David's team offered Callum less money for the fight than Turkey was gonna put up. Does that make any fucking sense, Jerry? Hey, let's do the same fight that Turkey was about to do, but let's do it for less money. That'll get it done, said no one ever. Just so that when the fight doesn't get done, in Las Vegas, where David wanted it to be, what did David do? Fought Anthony Yarde in Saudi. So then why didn't he just fight Callum Smith in Saudi? Because he thought that he could assert A-side status in Vegas, and when he saw that he couldn't, because he didn't have the money to do it, didn't have much of a choice. Now that's the whole truth and nothing but the truth. The unmitigated truth as to why David and Callum didn't fight. And why are we talking about their fight not happening? Because if David Benavidez would have just fought this guy in Saudi when he was initially offered to him, he wouldn't be a potential obstacle now for a Dimitri Bivol fight. Now, he's in the queue as his mandatory challenger, where before, if you would have fought him and you would have beat him, you would have got him out the way. Accenting my original point that everything David Benavidez has done has been counterproductive towards a Dimitri Bivol fight, from not fighting Callum when he was initially offered to him, to moving up to cruiserweight to fight Zerto in the interim. Like anybody with a functioning brain cell was really expecting him to come back down. Jerry didn't stop there either. He started to go in on Jai Opetaia, saying, so Jai's got Turkey behind him, and Turkey is out here tweeting about an Usyk fight. I don't know what point he thinks he's making by saying that. You do realize that he did the same thing with Jai Opetaia. Now I know, and you know, and we all know, Opetaia's team wants nothing to do with David Benavidez. What? Who is available right now, but it's the same old story. What do you mean he's available right now? When David Benavidez was asked about boxing Jai Opetaia next, he deferred to boxing Dimitri Bivol. So what do you mean he's available right now? Not according to David, but Jerry continued, it's the same old story. See Bivol, see Callum, see Canelo, see Better Beef. Better Beef? Better Beef literally said he wanted to box David Benavidez, but who made the decision to move up to cruiser? Was it Artur? Or was it David? I mean, if David Benavidez wanted to box Artur Better Beef so bad, he could have stayed put and fought him in the interim. He could have stayed right there and fought him instead of Zerto Ramirez. And apparently to Jerry, now Jai Opetaia is also ducking David Benavidez, saying, all talk, no smoke wanted. To which Kurt Smith replied, what the fuck are you talking about? What a load of shit. When Jai gets the WBC and the IBF back, Benavidez is the only fight that he will be chasing. It's Benavidez's side that are making all the excuses. Even his promoter yesterday was making all the excuses under the sun. Oh, but has to add that Benavidez would knock Jai out. LOL. Same thing as Jose. Loudmouth Benavidez. It takes a lot of attention to detail and more focus than your average boxing fan has to keep up with all of these gory details and why all of these fights haven't happened. More than your average boxing fan has time for. There's no incentive. The only reason I do it is because that's my bread and butter. So I can tell you categorically why all these fights didn't happen, but if that's a little bit too hard to keep up with, let me make it simple for you. David didn't fight any of these people because it was never his intention to fight any of these people. Just one fight into his light heavyweight campaign, he was already charting a course to cruiserweight. This is before he even fought David Morrell. Way before we got here. This move to cruiserweight was planned 2 years in advance of where we are now. So how could it have been his intention to either fight Dimitri or fight Artur or Callum or any of these people if he was already charting a course to a higher weight where he's not likely to come back down? All these supposed counter-arguments that guys like Jerry like to make greatly lack any substance or nuance. You want to believe every cockamamie explanation that David and his team come up with as to why fights don't happen after the fact. And I already told you none of that shit was gonna happen 2 years in advance. No Artur, no Dimitri, no Callum, no nothing, not even Jai Opetaia. Why? Because this guy was charting a course to cruiser after just one fight as a light heavy. Does that sound like he's gonna be around to box Dimitri or box Artur or Callum? You tried too fucking hard, Jerry, to convince me of all the bullshit that David has convinced you of. Maybe it's because you're gullible. Maybe it's because you're stupid. Because you think you're being charming. You think you're being witty. You think that you're my intellectual equal. Then how did I know your boy was gonna end up fighting Zerto 2 years in advance of you, Jerry? Stuff you convince yourself of in your own head sounds a lot better in there than it does in real time. But like any stubborn and stupid individual, you want to impose your beliefs on me. It's not enough for you to believe that shit. You want me to believe it too. Because you're childish and insecure. If you like David that much, why would you also need me to like him too? Everything I've pointed out is a matter of fact. It's irrefutable. Not an opinion and heavily documented. If you don't want to accept that, then don't. Like him anyway. See if I care. But I'm not the one calling into the boxing voice, worried about what Jerry's thinking or who Jerry likes. I'm not the one nudging and nagging Jerry to come around to my way of thinking. He's the one that comes here. Your bullshit is way too easy to shoot down. That's why you're a regular on the hate mail. You're a few rounds of light sparring for me, Jerry. This is child's play. Men's heavyweight news. Usyk sanctions reveal heavyweight champions next 5 fights, assuming he's got 5 fights left in him. Alexander Usyk's special sanction for the Rico Verhoeven crossover may have already mapped out the remainder of the heavyweight champion's career. The IBF confirmed to World Boxing News this week that Usyk requested special permission to participate in what would normally be considered an unsanctioned contest against the Dutch kickboxer on May 23rd in Giza, Egypt. Under standard IBF rules, the punishment is supposed to be immediate. Rule 5H states that if a champion participates in an unsanctioned contest within his weight class, the title will be declared vacant whether the champion wins or loses the bout. You want to pay attention to that. Instead, the IBF board voted to grant Usyk an exception, leaving the undisputed heavyweight champion in the unusual position of carrying the IBF, WBA, and WBC titles into a crossover fight, while multiple sanctioning bodies work around their own procedures to keep the division intact. Heavyweight boxing is entering strange territory. The WBA already confirmed to World Boxing News that Usyk would be permitted to defend its heavyweight title against Verhoeven, despite the Dutchman being unable to win the belt himself because he's not ranked by the organization. Now the IBF has followed the same route by approving an exception to a rule that would usually force a champion to vacate immediately. You want to pay attention to that. The WBC also sanctioned the contest and informed the IBF it intends to enforce the Agit Kabayel mandatory afterwards as part of the current title rotation, Usyk has actively sought out sanction for what is essentially an unsanctioned matchup that tells you exactly what he's trying to do. If Usyk planned to walk away soon, there would have been little reason to fight for permission to carry the belts into Egypt at all. Instead, he clearly wants to keep the titles together as long as possible, which points directly towards one more undisputed run.
This guy's not retiring.
An expected win over Verhoeven would most certainly lead into a mandatory clash with Agit Kabayel before reopening the door to a trilogy fight with Daniel Dubois. On paper, another Usyk versus Dubois fight after two dominant wins for the Ukrainian would feel more like an undisputed formality than a genuine rivalry. For now, though, everything starts with a three-belt heavyweight title defense where one challenger technically cannot win the titles that are on the line.
So what's it gonna be, Verhoeven, Kabayel, then if he beats them, Dubois again?
A Daniel Dubois trilogy was not in my bingo card, and the hope has got to be for the boxing fans that in between now and then somebody beats Daniel, because we don't need a third Usyk fight.
If what he is doing is going on a third undisputed run.
The IBF ruling also shows how differently elite champions are treated compared to the rest of boxing. The IBF said that if Usyk loses to Verhoeven, the heavyweight title becomes vacant immediately. If he wins, the organization will respect the WBC's mandatory rotation before enforcing its own mandatory challenger 180 days later. That leaves Kabayel waiting on the next move while the rest of the division watches how far Usyk intends to take his final run. The WBA would also receive similar consideration if it grants its own special permit connected to the title rotation. Usyk can defend 3 world titles. Rico Verhoeven can potentially beat the heavyweight champion of the world, but unless further exceptions arrive, he still may not leave with every belt.
And I don't imagine that all 3 sanctioning bodies are doing this and allowing this special exception out of the kindness of their own hearts or deep veneration for Alexander Usyk as a fighter. If they're doing this, it's because they're being paid to do it.
Don't expect any of them to say that, to acknowledge that the only real reason you're letting Usyk hang on to his belts is because he's paying you. Which, in effect, puts a very different complexion on the situation. Is this about maintaining boxing standards and boxing's structure, or is it about you guys treating it like a racket, blackmailing fighters whenever and wherever you can? Now, what happens after Egypt is where this really gets interesting. By granting Usyk special permission for the Verhoeven fight, while confirming the mandatory rotation afterwards, the sanctioning bodies may already have laid out what comes next for Usyk if he intends to keep the belts together. First comes the Verhoeven fight in Egypt, then comes Kabayel as the overdue WBC mandatory challenger. Afterwards, the undisputed picture would almost certainly reopen, potentially leading to a trilogy fight with Dubois, despite Usyk having already dominated him 2 times. Italma then enters the frame as the likely WBA route and could suddenly become one of the biggest fights boxing can make. The IBF situation remains less clear because no definitive #1 contender has fully emerged yet. Usyk may not get through all 5 fights, but if he intends to keep the heavyweight titles together until retirement, the blueprint now appears firmly in place.
Do I really believe that Alexander Usyk has another 5 fights left in him? Not really, but at the same time, if it were his intention to retire soon, he wouldn't be working this hard to keep these belts together.
And rest assured that to keep them together ahead of the Verhoeven fight, it would have costed him a substantial amount of money. The sanctioning bodies ain't doing this for free.
There is another story in the shadow of this one.
Was actually highlighted by my old dry cleaner in Pelham Parkway, Joe Habib, who said the IBF just gave Jai Opetaia Exhibit A in a potential lawsuit. This totally contradicts the so-called rule they enforced on him, but not on Usyk. This is blatant hypocrisy.
And what are the sanctioning bodies if not hypocritical? Under Rule 5H,
that an IBF champion is not allowed to participate in an unsanctioned boxing match on the premise that the title would be forfeit thereafter. Usyk shouldn't even have a title right now, but he still does.
Why is that?
Because he's not the one that signed the Zuffa. You're not punishing him the way you punished Jai Opetaia in an effort to make an example out of him, to discourage and deter any other IBF champion, any other fighter from signing to that promotion, because behind the scenes, you're colluding with their rivals, and you just made that very obvious.
Compare one situation to the other and analyze the merits.
Who's more qualified to be boxing for an alphabet title? Brendan Glenton, who has many more boxing matches than Rico Verhoeven, or Rico?
Analyze the merits. You decided not to sanction Jai Opetaia's fight because it was against Brendan Glenton.
That's what you said.
As if Rico Verhoeven boxing for not one, but 3 alphabet titles is supposed to be better because what, he deserves it more? Or is it that you stripped Jai Opetaia for some other reason? You stripped him because of who his promoter is, and it's not your place to do that.
And the only reason you would have done that is because you're colluding with Zuffa's rivals, which in the marketplace isn't exactly legal. You're intended to be an impartial mediator between different fighters that have different teams and different promoters to give divisions and give boxing a pecking order. It's not your job to dictate to fighters who they can sign to.
But Dana White said,
I don't give a fuck what Dana White said. He's allowed to change his mind. It's not a crime. Maybe in the beginning, he didn't want to work with you guys. Then, he changed his fucking mind!
you shouldn't punish Jai Opetaia for that, and you know that this wouldn't even be the first time this has happened.
I remember when the IBF decided not to sanction Golovkin versus Martirosyan. They didn't strip Gennady Golovkin right away. They gave him a deal. They gave him amnesty that they refused to give Jai Opetaia.
They told Gennady, okay, you want to fight this guy, we're not going to sanction the fight, but what we will do is enforce the mandatory afterwards. So why couldn't you do that for Jai Opetaia? Why didn't he get that consideration? It's because of who his promoter is.
You just made Zuffa's case against you very easy to prove, at which point the cheapest alternative for you will be to reinstate Jai Opetaia as full IBF champion unless you want to fight this out in court.
That can get expensive.
And don't misunderstand me, because I'm not advocating that the IBF strip Oleksandr Usyk to make things even. I'm saying, if you're not going to strip Usyk, then why strip Jai Opetaia? He didn't do anything wrong.
This never had to be a big deal. You made it one. Fighting Brendan Glenton shouldn't have been treated like it's a punishable offense. And even if there was a Zuffa title on the line, so what?
Many times has the IBO title been on the line, right alongside yours, and you never lost your tits about it. This is why, whether you like Dana White or not, Zuffa boxing or not, and whether or not that endeavor actually works, this is what boxing needs. A shakeup, and somebody to light a fire under the sanctioning bodies' asses that you can't just run around doing whatever you want to do anymore.
Seen enough of that shit. Enough decisions that don't make any fucking sense and don't harbor any consistency.
You didn't do what you did for the betterment of boxing or to uphold some sort of a standard, because Brendan Glenton is more of a boxer than Rico Verhoeven. This ain't his town.
This ain't his sport, and you're okay with Usyk fighting him. So what's wrong with Jai fighting Brandon?
Doesn't make a lot of sense, unless you're colluding. You're doing so on behalf of someone else who happens to be Zuffa's competitors.
Constitutes your abuse of power as a sanctioning body because that is not your job. You want to play this fucking game? Let's play.
Let's see who can actually afford this problem that you've created.